let's talk about the best defensive linemen available to us. And in order to do that, we are going to spend some time on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. So let's start originally with the defensive side of the ball. So I'll let you guys get a look at who this is. And as you're looking at this, I will tell you who we have brought in on visits, because that's kind of the point of this whole thing. I want to talk about people that we brought in on a visit. All right. So the two people that we brought in on the 30, all right, that were defensive line or defensive edges were Marshawn Kneeland. You see him down there at 53. Okay. And Nate Lynn out of William and Mary. Another William and Mary. Are you kidding me? That's weird. On the defensive tackle side of things, we went on both sides of it. We did Christian Boyd and Michael Hall. All right. So that was very interesting because those are like guys you might take a little bit later down. That's fine. But then we also brought in Jerzon Newton. And depending on who you're talking to, he is the number 2 defensive tackle in this class behind Byron Murphy. All right. If you go into, there's nothing of huge, like players, other than our local visits. Somehow local visit was Darius Robinson of Missouri. So that's an edge defender. Jalen Harrell out of Michigan. That's a later round pick. And then at the combine, we met with Marshawn Kneeland. So we met with him twice. We met with Darius Robinson. So we met with him twice. We met with Braylon Trice out of Washington. All right. So there was a lot of those types of players. And we also got the other defensive tackle out of Illinois, Johnny Newton. Okay. So when we look at this defensively, what do you want to do with this on defensive edge? I look at this and you can do one of two things. You can hope that Latu falls to you, but he won't. He won't. So do you trade up for a guy like Latu and say, you know what? We're one player away. And if we can put an elite pass rusher, across from Hutchinson, that's all we need. All right. That's all we need. Or, all right, Joseph, I hear you. We're going to talk about this. All right. Or do you wait and say, hey, I got a guy that I think could be just as good, Chop Robinson. Let's see what he has to bring. And I think this is where the idea of what Brad Holmes does just sticks. And it's, I'm going to get the best player available. So whoever he believes is the best player available, that is who he will take. But when I look at this, and remember, I was saying the Detroit Lions have picked 29, they have picked 61, and they have picked 73. When I look at this pass rushing class, I think the difference between what you would get at 29, which is Jerzon Newton, but especially at the edge, Darius Robinson, right? You might reach for Fisk or Jenkins, but if you wait, I'm telling you, one of these guys is going to be available. The Chris Jenkins, the Marshawn Kneelands, the Michael Hall Jr. All right. Big boy in the middle. All right. Rook or Horoho or Horoho. All right. Like Braylon Trice, good player, right? Little undersized. Tavondre Sweat. I just feel like the difference in defensive linemen, there's some depth there where it's like, all right, there might be somebody available. Mason Smith has been getting a lot of talk lately just because of his size, speed, athleticism combo. So those are the kind of things I'm looking at. I don't mind it. All right. So here's what Joseph is saying. He's saying trade up for Verse or Mitchell, trade back otherwise. Didn't realize I had that up there still. Hopefully you could see all the names I was looking at. I get that, but I get that. So Verse is your guy. I personally like Latu. All right. I like Latu. But we also have to look at who did the Lions talk to. And one thing that I think is very interesting, is they did not meet with what I would call any premier type edge rushers, which tells me maybe they like where they're at. All they've met with is edge rushers down here. Now, did they meet with a premier defensive tackle? Yeah, they met with Jerzon Newton. They did. And man, oh man, would he be fun to have in there. Man, would he be fun to have in there. I think that would be a fantastic get and depth piece. And how nice is it that we're talking, whether we're talking corner, whether we're talking defensive lineman. All right, we're going to talk offensive lineman here in just a second. And then after that, we're going to go to wide receiver. But how nice is it that we're talking whenever we're talking a first round pick? And for almost every one of these first round picks, we're saying, okay, this is a depth piece year one. That's where you want to be as an organization. That is what Brad Holmes has done. That is what he has done. All right. Detroit fan man said, I would just take Newton at 29, let Aleem have a dominant contract year next to Reader and become a cap casualty with his replacement already here and get a comp pick after his release. Oh, man, what brutal. I like it, but brutal, man. Like, that's nasty. I mean, good for you. Instead of paying Aleem McNeil $20 million a year, you have Jerzon Newton here. And that is what you have to do, people. Like, that is part of what you have to do. I'm not saying do it. I'm not saying do it, but I am saying, like, those are the kind of things you can get away with. All right. Those are the kind of things you can get away with. All right. I told you we'd talk about offensive linemen on the side too. First, let's stick with the interior side of the ball. All right. Troy Fountaino. I think that's a really interesting one. And I think it's interesting that they consider him interior offensive line. Graham Barton is a very good player. Jackson Powers Johnson has, like, there is nobody I like in this class more than Jackson Powers Johnson. The idea that he could come in, he could be a depth piece for us this year, because there's no way that the trio that we have on the inside of, Ziegler and Ragnow and whoa, why am I blanking on my Michigan boy, right? Like, there's no way that trio, Graham Glasgow, is going to stay healthy together for 17 games. You will need another good player. And I think Graham Barton, Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier, Cooper Beebe, Christian Haynes, all of those guys are good players that can become very good interior offensive linemen. And again, with the Lions holding pick 61 and 73, I think interior offensive line, I get it. If you can get Jackson Powers Johnson, if he falls to you by some miracle, you take him. That is your center of the future that plays guard until then. Don't even worry about it. All right. Or he's a great guard of the future. It doesn't even matter. Graham Barton would be the same thing for you. And I think Zach Frazier could be as well. And I like what BB does. So you could wait and have Christian Haynes, Cooper Beebe at that pick that is in that 61 range. All right. Here's another one. Zach Zinter, later round. Zinter got hurt at U of M, right? Tore his ACL in the playoff. Like, he's not even going to be available this year. So you can get him in a much later round, but he's a guy that probably would have been sitting in the same range with Beebe, Haynes, Frazier. Like, he probably would have been a top 100 pick if he had not gotten hurt. So let's get these interior ones out of here and let's talk about the offensive tackles. Okay. First off, let's just get out of our mind that some of these guys are going to be here. And I don't see us trading up for an offensive tackle. It'd be really weird to trade up for someone you're not going to use this year. All right. So these top guys, even JC Latham, I don't think they're going to be there. All right. Erasmus Mims and Graham Barton. We already talked about Barton. Mims could fall. He could absolutely fall. I'm not a big Taylor Guyton fan. I'm not a huge Taylor Guyton fan. I am, however, a big Jordan Morgan fan. I think Jordan Morgan is a guy who you could play at guard next year, and then move out to tackle if the contract doesn't work out with Decker. I think Kingsley here, the cousin of Penei Sewell, sign me up. Like, I'm good with it. Like, the guy's a monster. All right. He is an absolute monster. And it would be nice to see a pick on an offensive tackle taken kind of early on here, or just another high quality offensive lineman. Brad Holmes was talking just recently in a press conference about how he absolutely believes that the offensive line is key to good quarterback play. And he didn't say just Jared Goff. He didn't say just your what's the word I want to use with it? He isn't talking about just Jared Goff and how Jared Goff is a non-mobile quarterback. He's saying if you're mobile, If you're not mobile, if you're a scrambler, it doesn't matter. You need a good offensive line. Expect him to continue to pour into it. The question is when. The offensive tackle market is very deep in this draft. But when I say deep, I mean the interior, not the offensive line. It's a deep offensive line draft, but like 2 rounds, 2 to 3 rounds. Don't get too cute with it. You need to draft an offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds almost every single year. That's just the way it works. And then you need to get lucky on a couple other ones. But offensive tackles and offensive linemen are absolutely